I never dated here because I saw vicariously through my roommate how terrible it was. Somehow getting drinks was the replacement of having coffee and breakfast.
There's a picture of Erika Kirk with a ponytail, and from her past. That person matches who I saw at Fort Huachuca in the lobby the night before, and she was with that man in the lobby, and that man, he was present.
When a public record seems to clash with a specific statement made on national television, people are naturally going to start checking receipts. And that is exactly what happened here. No massive conspiracy theory is needed. The real question is whether the dates actually match. After Erika Kirk's comments about her romantic history were compared with publicly available information, critics began arguing that there could be a serious gap in the timeline. That alleged mismatch is the documented issue driving this controversy. It starts with the CBS town hall, because that appearance put the claim directly in the spotlight. On December 13th, 2025, Erika Kirk sat down with Bari Weiss during a nationally televised CBS town hall. During their conversation, Kirk said she had not dated anyone for roughly 5 years before meeting Charlie Kirk in 2018. 5 years. That is a pretty specific timeline. Kirk was not simply saying she had been single for a minute. She described that stretch as an intentional decision, presenting herself as someone who had stepped away from dating while focusing on discipline and her private life. Taken literally, her account would suggest she was romantically uninvolved from around 2013 through 2018.
Of Erika Kirk, and I'm assuming her baby, but listen, look at her hands. I'm going to show you a picture of these scars. There is a scar right there. Zoom in on it.
And that is where critics say things get messy, because publicly documented information has raised questions about whether that timeline fully matches the record. That is not some random or fuzzy comment. It is a specific claim about her personal timeline made during a nationally televised interview. So once that 5-year statement is placed next to older material that is publicly available, critics say the story starts looking complicated. The key question is simple: do these different accounts actually line up? Now jump back to November 2014, because this is where one major piece of the timeline comes into play. Arizona Foothills magazine published a profile of Erika in which she talked about her ideal day. One detail immediately grabs attention. In that profile, she referred to J.T. Massey as my favorite human and best friend, also, conveniently enough, my incredible boyfriend. Those are her published words, and they appear to describe Massey as her boyfriend during a period that seems difficult to square with the later 5-year claim. Then 2015 enters the picture, and critics say the timeline gets even tougher to explain.
Because I saw vicariously through my roommate how terrible it was. Somehow getting drinks was the replacement of having coffee and breakfast. I personally would rather have coffee or brunch with someone than going, I don't drink. I find it unproductive, not because I'm holier than whatever. I just don't operate that way. But I always thought it was very strange how she would go to drinks with one guy and then go to dinner with him.
A resurfaced Amazing Race audition tape, later covered by Us Weekly, reportedly features Erika and Massey presenting themselves as a couple while trying out for the show. In the footage, Erika says that she and Massey are dating. That detail matters because this is not simply some anonymous internet rumor or a stranger making an unsupported claim. It is publicly circulated footage, subsequently discussed by media outlets, in which Erika reportedly describes the relationship herself. Put that alongside her later CBS account, and it raises a clear question about how the dates fit together and what exactly she meant when describing those years before meeting Charlie Kirk.
I hosted the first Trump rally in Trump rally history right here in Arizona in 2015. I got a call. I got a call from Miss Erika Kirk, Miss Arizona 2012. I just want to help, she said. So naturally, I put her right behind the president at that.
Then the timeline hits September 2017, and another archived piece of material starts turning heads. A post reportedly preserved through the Wayback Machine appears to show Erika with Cabot Phillips, a conservative media figure who has had professional ties to Turning Point USA. The caption attributed to Phillips says, "Yes, we are that couple that gets painting lessons together." The archived post is reportedly dated September to 2017, around 1 year before Erika's reported first meeting with Charlie Kirk. That timing is exactly why critics have zeroed in on it. What happened later has also sparked plenty of online chatter. Public social media references reportedly connecting Erika and Phillips were no longer available on their accounts. Now, that does not automatically reveal why anything disappeared. People delete, archive, or clean up old posts for all kinds of reasons, so the removals themselves are not proof of some hidden motive. Still, once internet sleuths began pulling up archived material, those older posts became another piece of the debate surrounding how Erika later described that chapter of her life. Then we reach summer 2018, the same general period Erika has described as the start of her journey toward Charlie Kirk. Erika reportedly appeared on season 3 of Bravo's Summer House as a single woman being set up on a double date with cast member Jordan Veroy. Years later, Carl Radke discussed that appearance in a June 9th, 2026 Variety interview. His comments were then picked up by multiple entertainment publications, including The Daily Beast, AOL, The Tab, Yahoo Entertainment, and Reality T, bringing even more attention to what Erika's relationship status may have been around that crucial 2018 window. Radke told Variety, "I remember it all. I didn't know she was Erika Kirk. She wasn't with Charlie Kirk then. She was doing stuff in New York. I met her and her brunette friend, who was on the double date as well." He also said he had previously been advised not to really discuss the situation before ultimately choosing to speak publicly about it. That extra detail only brought more attention to his recollection and the timing surrounding the appearance. Stack the publicly reported material side by side, and critics point to 4 separate pieces stretching from 2014 through 2018. That window matters because it overlaps with the 5-year period at the center of Erika's later account. The material includes her own published description of a boyfriend, resurfaced video footage reportedly showing her describing another relationship, an archived social media post, and Radke's on-the-record recollection to Variety. Critics argue that combination makes the timeline look seriously messy. At the same time, these records do not automatically tell us the complete context, seriousness, or exact nature of every relationship or encounter. What they do create is a clear reason to question how the different dates and statements fit together. Candace Owens took that criticism much further on her podcast in February 2026, describing the pattern as Erika glitching. Owens said, "There is something casual about the way Erika lies and how she lies about her background, how she lies about whether or not she's had boyfriends, didn't date for 5 years. That's not true. It's almost like she glitches and she doesn't remember." Those are Owens's accusations, not independently established facts about Erika's honesty or state of mind. Still, the intensity of that language shows how this timeline dispute moved beyond internet chatter and turned into a much sharper public fight over Erika's own account of her past. The word glitches quickly became one of the most repeated phrases among people tracking this story because critics believe it captures something very specific. The controversy is not simply about Erika having relationships before Charlie Kirk. The real heat comes from how she later described that period of her life, and whether those statements can actually be squared with older material that resurfaced online. From the critic's perspective, the receipts were already out there in public view, buried in old profiles, videos, and archived posts just waiting to be rediscovered. Now dig into the individual relationships, because each reported connection adds a different layer to this timeline. Online researchers following the controversy have spent serious time going through old interviews, resurfaced footage, archived social media posts, and media coverage involving people Erika was reportedly connected to. Instead of relying on one viral claim, critics have tried to build their argument by comparing several different records against her later 5-year statement. The J.T. Massey relationship is one of the most heavily documented examples those critics point toward. Arizona Foothills Magazine is a named publication with an archived profile containing the quote at the heart of this part of the controversy. In that interview, Erika described Massey as my favorite human and best friend, also, conveniently enough, my incredible boyfriend. That quote has since resurfaced and been discussed by outlets including Bored Panda, Newsweek, and IB Times UK. For critics, that gives them a specific published statement, not just online gossip, to place directly beside Erika's later description of her dating history. Massey was reportedly playing professional basketball around this period, and their relationship does not appear to have been kept completely under wraps. Erika publicly referred to him as her boyfriend. Photographs of the two circulated and resurfaced footage from a 2015 Amazing Race audition, later covered by Us Weekly, reportedly shows them appearing on camera as a couple. Based on material cited by outlets covering the controversy, critics generally place their reported relationship somewhere around 2014 to 2016. And that timing drops straight into the window now under scrutiny. Critics argue this does not look like some quick, undefined interaction that could easily disappear from someone's description of their dating history. In the published Arizona Foothills Magazine profile, Erika described Massey as my favorite human and best friend, also, conveniently enough, my incredible boyfriend. That wording is pretty strong. At minimum, it suggests that when the profile was published, Erika publicly described Massey as both her boyfriend and someone personally important to her. Critics say that makes the later 5-year timeline even harder to understand without additional context. Then there are the photographs that have made the rounds online, adding another layer of speculation. Some online communities following the controversy have labeled images of Erika and Massey as engagement-style photos and treated them as evidence that the relationship may have been especially serious. But that claim needs a clear boundary. Photos can show two people together, but they cannot prove an engagement by themselves. Without stronger documentation confirming one, the engagement interpretation remains speculation and should stay separate from what the published profile and resurfaced video footage more directly document. No official engagement appears to have been publicly announced, and the material cited here does not establish that Erika and Massey were ever engaged or married. That distinction matters. Still, critics point to the photographs, their public appearances, and, most importantly, Erika's own published description of Massey as signs that this was an openly acknowledged relationship that appeared meaningful at the time. In their eyes, that makes the disputed 5-year timeline even tougher to square without more context. Then comes the Cabot-Phillips chapter, and this one leaves a different kind of paper trail. Phillips has worked in conservative media, including at the Daily Wire and Campus Reform. placing him within some of the same broader political media circles associated with Turning Point USA. People digging into the story have highlighted that overlap, but professional connections by themselves prove absolutely nothing about the nature of anyone's private relationship. The bigger focus is an Instagram post reportedly preserved through the Wayback Machine and dated September 2017. Critics interpret the archived post, and particularly its caption, as evidence that Phillips and Erika were publicly presenting themselves as a couple roughly 1 year before Erika reportedly first met Charlie Kirk. References connecting the two were later no longer visible on their public social media accounts. There is no established evidence showing why those posts disappeared, so claims about some deliberate cover-up would go beyond what the records actually demonstrate. But because web archives can preserve material long after the original posts are deleted or become unavailable, this particular snapshot has become one of the most talked about pieces in the disputed timeline. Critics have taken those missing posts and pushed the theory much further, arguing that the social media cleanup was deliberate, happened around Erika's entrance into Charlie Kirk's world, and was meant to wipe an earlier relationship from public view. But that is still an interpretation, not a documented fact. Two separate questions need to stay separate here: whether certain posts disappeared and why they disappeared. Archived records may help establish that content once existed, but a deletion alone cannot prove somebody's motive or show that there was an intentional effort to rewrite the past. Even so, critics say the timing is worth a closer look when compared with Erika's later description of her romantic history. Adding another twist is Phillips's continued involvement in conservative political circles. He has reportedly appeared on the Turning Point USA speaking circuit in connection with an event titled How to Lead Like Charlie. For people deep diving this story, that creates a pretty wild overlap. Someone critics identify as having previously had a romantic relationship with Erika, later appearing in a speaking role connected with Charlie's organization. It sounds dramatic, but that connection alone does not establish wrongdoing, coordination, or anybody's private motives. And now the timeline gets even more tangled. The next name is Tyler Bowyer, along with the circumstances surrounding Erika's introduction to Charlie. Critics argue that connections between Erika's earlier social circle and Charlie's Turning Point USA network may have been more layered than the cleaner, simplified version of the story might suggest. That does not automatically mean anything improper happened, but it has given online researchers another trail to follow. Bowyer is a senior figure in the Turning Point network and has been publicly credited with introducing Erika to Charlie Kirk. According to the commonly repeated version of their story, Bowyer helped arrange what initially appeared to be a professional job interview between Erika and Charlie for a possible position connected to Turning Point USA. But the meeting reportedly shifted from business to personal and ultimately became their first date. That familiar origin story has been repeated publicly for years, and critics are now examining how neatly it fits alongside the other connections appearing throughout this disputed timeline. Critics, however, say there could be more context behind that introduction than the familiar story reveals. Candace Owens has cited sources on her podcast, alleging that Bowyer had business connections involving Erika's mother, Lori Francevy, through Turning Point-related operations. That is a significant allegation, but it needs to stay labeled exactly that unless solid, independent evidence verifies it. Bowyer, meanwhile, has publicly discussed his own role in bringing Erika and Charlie together, making his place in their origin story part of the public record. But one detail keeps getting dragged back into the spotlight. Erika has publicly indicated that she does not clearly remember how she originally met Bowyer, the person later credited with introducing her to the man she would eventually marry. By itself, forgetting when or how you first met somebody is hardly proof of anything shady. Memories can be incomplete, especially years later. Critics, however, argue that when this memory gap is stacked beside the other reported connections surrounding Erika before Charlie, it becomes another detail they want clarified, rather than brushed aside. The broader theory critics have built is not that Erika committed a crime or that some secret outside force somehow arranged her relationship. Their argument is more straightforward. Erika Frantzvy's path to becoming Erika Kirk may have involved more pre-existing social and professional overlap than the simplified public origin story suggests. They point to Cabot Phillips' place in the wider conservative media scene, Owens's unverified allegations involving Tyler Bowyer and Erika's mother, and Erika's reported proximity to people within the Turning Point UESA orbit before she began dating Charlie. None of those connections alone proves a hidden plan. But critics say the growing web makes the backstory far more complicated than it first appeared. From that angle, critics question whether Erika and Charlie's meeting was really as spontaneous or as purely guided by fate as it has sometimes been presented. But that remains an interpretation, not something established by the connections alone. Moving in overlapping social or professional circles does not prove that anybody planned a romance behind the scenes or secretly mapped out how the couple would eventually get together. What keeps this debate buzzing is Erika's own retelling of how she first crossed paths with Charlie. She has discussed an airport encounter during an Israel pilgrimage with her mother, spotting Charlie near the ticket line, receiving encouragement from her mother, and later getting a formal introduction through Bowyer in connection with a job interview. Critics claim that different interviews have included details that do not always sound exactly the same. That does not automatically mean deception. People can remember the same event differently over time. Still, those variations have become another part of the story that critics are examining frame by frame. The airport encounter, the restaurant dinner, the Turning Point event. These details have all entered the conversation surrounding how Erika and Charlie first connected. Across different interviews, critics say the story has sometimes been framed differently, with certain details receiving more emphasis or appearing to shift depending on the telling. Candace Owens has focused heavily on those differences, arguing that they fit what she sees as a wider pattern in Erika's public storytelling. Owens's argument is that meeting the person who eventually became Erika's husband would seemingly be a memorable event with a fairly stable timeline. But memory is not a perfect recording, and differences between interviews do not prove dishonesty. Even so, those changing details are exactly where critics continue digging, comparing old interviews line by line for anything that does not appear to match. Then come Erika's public comments about the final night before Charlie left for Utah Valley University, a deeply sensitive part of the story that has drawn intense attention online. Erika has said Charlie slept in their daughter's room that night instead of their shared bedroom. According to her explanation, there was a practical reason for the arrangement. She wanted Charlie to get quality sleep before what was expected to be a demanding day filled with public speaking. Erika has also said she never got the full goodbye with Charlie that she later wished they had shared. In her account, their final interaction that morning was brief. She said Charlie came into the bedroom to retrieve his wedding ring and necklace before leaving early on September 10th, while she was still not fully awake. Because these details come directly from Erika's public retelling, critics have examined them closely alongside her other statements. But there is a clear line here. The details should not be pushed beyond what Erika's account actually establishes. And that distinction matters, especially with something this personal. What Erika described is one thing. What strangers online speculate those details might secretly mean is something entirely different. According to Erika, Charlie spent that final night sleeping in their daughter's room rather than beside her, then briefly returned the following morning to collect his wedding ring and necklace before leaving. Critics may question the circumstances or compare this account with other statements, but those details alone do not establish some hidden conflict or sinister explanation. They document Erika's description of a final evening and morning that, in hindsight, would carry enormous emotional weight. Critics find that sequence especially striking because Erika and Charlie publicly presented their marriage as deeply connected, traditional, and rooted in their faith. From that perspective, Charlie sleeping in a different room and the couple having only a brief final interaction can look unusual when placed beside their public image. That contrast has given online commentators plenty to talk about. But unusual circumstances are not automatically suspicious, and those details alone do not prove there were hidden problems inside their marriage. Then comes another sensitive detail from that final period that has sparked even more questions. Reports involving a possible update to Charlie's end-of-life planning. According to claims circulated in coverage surrounding Candace Owens' investigation, Erika reportedly told people close to her that Charlie had been planning to sign an updated end-of-life document on September 15th, 2025, just days after his death. On the surface, that timing sounds dramatic, which is exactly why people have latched onto it. But without the actual document or independent confirmation of the changes being considered, there is no solid basis for claiming what Charlie intended to change, why he wanted to change it, or whether those changes would have affected Erika or anyone else. Estate planning documents can be changed for plenty of ordinary reasons, and major life events, like the birth of a child, changes in assets, marriage, divorce, or simply a change in someone's wishes, can trigger a review. So while the reported timing has grabbed attention, the date alone does not reveal what Charlie allegedly wanted to change. Without the actual document or testimony from someone with direct knowledge, nobody can responsibly claim what those possible changes were or why he was considering them. The reported September 15th appointment never happened, leaving a major information gap. What changes, if any, Charlie planned to make? And what might have motivated them has not been publicly established through first-hand evidence. That missing context is crucial. The reported update could have involved family arrangements, finances, routine estate planning, organizational matters, or something completely different. Without stronger evidence, jumping from an appointment date to a dramatic motive would be pure speculation. Still, critics following the story have connected 3 details that they believe deserve attention. Erika's account of Charlie sleeping separately on the final night, her description of not getting a full goodbye the following morning, and reports that an estate planning update was supposedly approaching. Put those details side by side, and some online commentators have interpreted them as possible signs that the marriage was under strain during its final days. But that interpretation goes beyond what the available facts establish. None of those details, alone or stacked together, proves what was privately happening inside their marriage. And that leaves one of the biggest unanswered questions hanging over this part of the story. Whether any private tension actually existed, and whether it had anything to do with the inconsistencies critics believe they have found in Erika's public history, remains unknown. There is no reliable public evidence establishing what Charlie privately knew, suspected, or believed about these issues. Claims that he was quietly wrestling with doubts, discovering hidden information, or intentionally avoiding a confrontation should therefore remain clearly labeled as theories, not facts. People following this story have nevertheless portrayed Charlie's public restraint as fitting the personality they believed they had watched for years, controlled, careful, and selective about what he brought into public view. But there is an important limit to that argument. A public persona, even one observed for years, cannot tell outsiders what was actually happening inside a marriage or what private conversations may have taken place behind closed doors. After his death, critics started pulling together a long list of questions they believe deserve much closer scrutiny. They point to Erika's 5-year dating claim and older material they say clashes with it, the archived Cabot Phillips posts and their later disappearance, different versions surrounding how Erika and Charlie first crossed paths, unverified allegations involving Tyler Bowyer and Erika's mother, Erika's account of Charlie's final night and morning, and reports that an estate planning update was scheduled for 5 days after his assassination. But these details are not all equal. Some come from published records or direct statements, while others depend on allegations, interpretations, or incomplete information. The controversy really explodes when critics connect those separate dots into one bigger theory. And that larger theory remains unproven without stronger evidence about what was happening privately. None of these details standing alone proves more than the available evidence actually supports. Still, critics argue that once everything is lined up chronologically, the overall picture looks more complicated than the public account Erika has presented of her relationship with Charlie and his final months. Some longtime followers, people who spent years hearing Charlie speak and watching his political work, say the unanswered questions deserve serious examination rather than being dismissed outright. But familiarity with somebody's public personality only goes so far. No matter how closely supporters followed Charlie's career, that cannot establish what he privately knew, what he felt about his marriage, or what conversations and struggles may or may not have existed away from the cameras. Charlie spent years telling his audience to examine the evidence, challenge assumptions, and question narratives they believed did not match the facts. Now, parts of that same community say they are turning that mindset toward the circumstances surrounding his death and the growing fight over how his legacy and Erika's public account should be understood. They are pulling up archived posts, replaying old interviews, comparing dates, and putting public statements side by side. Instead of automatically accepting one version of events, they are looking for details they believe do not add up. But there is a major difference between asking tough questions and actually proving a theory. When separate facts are stitched together, they can sometimes create a dramatic story that the underlying evidence does not fully support. Whether future proceedings and credible investigations uncover major new information about Erika, Charlie's final months, or the circumstances surrounding his death, or whether much of the suspicion reflects a grieving community searching for answers, remains unresolved. Any September 1st hearing, later trial proceedings, and newly verified evidence should be judged by what they actually establish, not by the rumors surrounding them. So what do you think? If Erika's CBS Town Hall account really does conflict with older public material, including the reported J.T. Massey relationship, the archived Cabot Phillips material, and Carl Radke's comments to Variety, is that a meaningful contradiction that deserves this level of scrutiny? Or could there be missing context that changes how the 5-year statement should be understood? Because with this many dates and claims being debated, the difference between a genuine contradiction and an incomplete story matters. And then there are those final night details, which have become some of the most sensitive pieces people are dissecting. Charlie sleeping separately, The full goodbye Erika says she never got, and the reported estate planning update, supposedly scheduled for days later, have all been pulled into the same conversation. But do those details actually reveal anything about the private state of their marriage? Or are critics connecting events that may have completely separate explanations? That line matters. Unanswered questions can absolutely invite scrutiny, but they do not automatically expose some bigger hidden story. Then there is the timeline that started this entire storm. If Erika's CBS town hall account genuinely conflicts with older public material, including the reported J.T. Massey relationship, the archived Cabot Phillips material, and Carl Radke's comments to Variety, how significant is that contradiction? Does it deserve the intense scrutiny it is receiving? Or could missing context change what Erika meant when she described those 5 years? A contradiction can raise legitimate questions without automatically proving that every larger theory built around it is true. And the final night details bring us straight back to that same problem. The separate sleeping arrangement, Erika's description of the goodbye she never really got, and reports of an upcoming estate planning update may sound dramatic when stacked together. But putting 3 circumstances next to each other does not prove they were connected. Do they reveal something important about what was happening privately, or are people filling gaps in an incomplete story with assumptions? Scrutiny is fair, and questions can be worth asking. But the strongest conclusions still require evidence that goes beyond suspicion. Now, I want to know what you think about all of this. Drop your take in the comments and tell me which part of this messy timeline stands out the most. Is there a detail you think deserves more attention, or do you think people are reading way too much into the unanswered questions? Sound off below. If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what comes next. And share this video with somebody who has been keeping up with this story. Because the more people looking carefully at the documented record, the stronger the conversation becomes. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.